65 million years ago, when dinosaurs were still alive, intelligent life forms had already visited Earth, while a fierce battle was happening at the same time. It is quickly revealed that a soldier in crimson armor was the sole survivor, as all his comrades had already been killed by the enemy. This leaves him with no choice but to remove the power crystals from his fallen colleagues and command that the items find those who are worthy, so they can save the planet from their foe, known as Rita Repulsa. However, just before the enemy can carry out the slaughter, an asteroid hits Earth, causing a massive explosion that completely destroys the woman's armor while throwing her into the ocean, temporarily saving the planet in the process. Many years later, in modern times, a troubled student named Jason is taken to a detention center for constantly causing trouble with the law. When he enters the building for his weekly punishment, he soon meets a young girl named Kimberly and tries to flirt immediately, but only receives a cold treatment for acting like a lovesick fool. Very shortly, the young man decides to enter the classroom, where a group of rebellious teenagers is waiting for class to begin. But Jason quickly notices that an autistic student named Billy is being bullied by a fellow classmate. This prompts Jason to intervene immediately, making the bully have a rage fit, but Jason manages to impose some decency over the thug, taking his dignity away at the same time. When class finally ends, Billy goes to thank Jason for what happened, but decides to ask him for a second favor, as he desperately needs a ride that night for an important experiment. Surprisingly, Jason agrees to help once again, and they soon head toward the nearby construction site. Moments later, they arrive at a quarry that is clearly off-limits without permission. However, the two begin to bring Billy's tools to the nearby rocks, and while Billy explains that he has detected some strange radiation coming from the rocks around this location. However, Jason has no interest in proceeding, as he does not want to be caught by the police again, not realizing that two strangers have also gathered at this location. When Jason finally reaches the car, he starts hearing music from the nearby forest and decides to investigate what is happening. To his surprise, he sees that Kimberly has come to this spot too, who promptly jumps off a cliff and falls into the water below, causing the man to run to the woman immediately, as he thinks the girl has accidentally drowned. However, his nightly routine fails miserably, as the woman is clearly too strong and independent for him to rescue, while she thinks Jason is nothing more than a creepy stalker. What they do not realize is that Billy has already started his crazy experiment, planting numerous dynamites in the nearby rocks, before pressing the detonator and causing a large explosion in the process. This makes everyone run towards the young man immediately, including the stranger who introduces himself as Zach, and the strange girl known as Trini, who warns the others to leave that place immediately. However, before the girl can finish speaking, the huge cliff begins to collapse due to the previous explosion. When they finally recover from the landslide, Billy is shocked to see a crystal formation in front of him, while the group starts examining the strange objects that appear to be alien in nature. Very soon, they manage to extract a series of artifacts from the mysterious wall that seems to be glowing with different colors, but are quickly interrupted by a loud siren that forces them to rush toward the car immediately, while they try to get away from the location before being chased by security. Surprisingly, the young people manage to evade the pursuers in vehicles while they continue speeding in their car, but quickly realize that a train is also heading their way. However, they refuse to give up so easily and decide to outrun the train, but end up getting hit in the process and are thrown toward the cliff below. At the same time, a fishing boat in the ocean prepares to return to the city, but quickly notices something within the catch, which appears to be a woman's body that has been dead for a long time. The crew decides to keep the remains in their boat, while eventually bringing it back to the docks, where the fishermen notify the police about what they found. However, when the officer is left alone to investigate further, the body begins to come back to life and quickly attacks the man from behind. At the same time, Jason manages to wake up from the car accident, but is shocked to discover that he is completely unhurt while finding the red crystal still in his pocket. It is quickly revealed that the other young people also survived the accident and immediately discover that somehow they have gained superpowers after what happened the previous night. This leads them to meet inside their school immediately, while they plan to return to the construction site to discover the truth about the mysterious crystals. Very soon, the young people manage to reach the mining site, but are surprised to see that Zach has been there all morning with Trini, as they claim to have also gained superpowers. The others see this and begin to use their new abilities immediately, as they scale the rocks like spiders and quickly manage to climb the mountains. However, the young people soon find themselves in front of a massive cliff, but Trini decides to test her powers further as she leaps over the field without thinking twice and miraculously lands on the other side. This makes the others decide to take the leap of faith as well, as they jump over the enormous cliff with their superpowers, while they fall with tremendous force to the ground. But the others quickly notice that Billy is too scared to jump like the rest. Fortunately, the young man finally manages to gather his courage and decides to finally jump over the immense cliff, barely managing to land on the edges in the process. However, before Billy can recover his balance, he accidentally falls backward, causing all his friends to scream his name. Surprisingly, the young people quickly discover that their friend is still alive, as he apparently landed inside a large underground pool of water. This makes the others decide to jump too, as everyone falls into the mysterious water below the mountains. Very soon the group notices that their bodies are glowing with different colors, while Billy sees a hidden entrance at the bottom and decides to dive toward the location with his friends. Surprisingly, the group soon discovers a strange barrier that seems to defy the very physics, and the young people manage to cross to the other side before falling into a gigantic underground cave. When they finally recover from the fall, they are shocked to realize that the water seems to be floating above the ceiling, which leads them to move forward to search for an exit. However, what the young people did not expect was to find a massive spaceship hidden inside the underground tunnels, which appears to have been dormant for millions of years. The team decides to approach closer to the enormous vehicle and soon notices that their crystals begin to shine, which eventually opens the door of the ship to the inside. This allows the young people to enter the ship while they are amazed by the technology that is clearly more advanced than theirs. However, the young people quickly realize that something is wrong, as the ship begins to change its shape, blocking the original exit and forcing everyone to run desperately for their lives while trying to hide from the approaching danger. Things become even worse when friends start getting picked off one by one, being completely dominated by a talking robot, but it turns out that the machine is not their enemy. It is quickly revealed that the robot's name is Alpha 5, and he has been waiting for humans all this time, while telling the people to go to their respective platforms so they can discover the truth about why they are there. This leaves them with no choice but to go to their platforms around the circle, which immediately activates a second entity known as Zordon, who appears on the walls behind the group. It turns out that he was the Crimson Soldier from 65 million years ago, who died fighting to protect Earth from his enemy known as Rita Repulsa. Zordon tells the humans that the crystals they possess are called Power Coins, which chose the people to become the next generation of Power Rangers. This means that they must protect the Zeo Crystal from being stolen by Repulsa, which will give her the power to wipe out all life on Earth. However, the humans have difficulty believing everything Zordon said, which forces the alien to show them directly by putting them inside a vision of the future. It is quickly revealed that Earth will be destroyed in 11 days when Repulsa finally obtains the Zeo Crystal, turning all of humanity into immobile statues while crumbling into nothing but dust. When the group eventually wakes up from the horrible vision, Zordon tells the young people that they are the only hope of saving this planet and that they must learn to master their true powers, transforming into their armors. However, when they try to utilize the powers of the energy field known as the Morphin Grid, they are unable to transform into Power Rangers, which means they must start training without the use of their armors. Very soon, the robot takes the people to a training facility known as the Cave, where numerous stone monsters are formed by the simulation so that the humans can improve their combat skills by fighting against the creatures. However, the monsters are much tougher than they seem, as the group continues to get beaten up by the simulations, while the young people can barely defend themselves at first. But through several days of training and perseverance, they finally manage to take down the opponents using the techniques that were taught by the robot. Surprisingly, even with their improvements in fighting abilities, the young people still cannot transform into their battle armors. But despite this issue, Billy manages to use the Morphin Grid to locate the Zeo Crystal and eventually discovers that the item is hidden beneath the Krispy Kreme in his city. This information is immediately reported to Alpha 5, which makes the robot decide to reward the young people for their progress and show them even more weapons from his arsenal, as the group is amazed to see the enormous robots before their eyes, which all resemble different species of dinosaurs from the time they were created. However, Alpha 5 tells the young people that they are not ready to pilot the machines, as they need to be able to invoke their armors first. But Zack refuses to listen to his trainer and decides to start piloting his giant robot immediately. This quickly proves to be a big mistake, as the man cannot control the machine at all, causing him to run towards the city, destroying everything in his path, before eventually crashing back into the caves and nearly killing all his teammates at the same time. Fortunately, the people managed to dodge the impact in time, but this greatly irritates the other team members who were almost killed, which causes Jason to start arguing with Zack out of anger. Billy sees this and tries to stop the fight immediately, but what they do not expect is for the friend to transform into his armor in the process, finally turning into a Power Ranger. However, the transformation quickly disappears in front of them, while Billy seems unable to regain his powers as before. What they do not realize is that Zordon has been watching them all this time and is very disappointed with the youth's ineptitude, while he tells the humans to go home immediately. Jason hears this and decides to confront his mentor alone, but is shocked to discover that Zordon only wanted the young people to unlock the Morphin Grid so he could be revived by cosmic energy. This leaves Jason very upset, as he realizes that Zordon never had faith in their abilities from the start. But the man assures the alien that they will save the planet from its enemy, as he is willing to sacrifice his own life in the process. What they do not realize is that Repulsa has already entered their city, as she heads toward a jewelry store filled with gold and begins to absorb all the metals for her body, before eventually creating a giant weapon in the process. Soon, a police officer runs inside to try to stop the woman from robbing the store, but his bullets have no effect on damaging the enemy, while Repulsa manages to summon her monster and kill the man in the process, while eventually exploding the whole building as well. The young people are eventually notified of this terrible news, as they realize they are running out of time before the Earth is destroyed by Repulsa, and Jason decides that they must attack the enemy before she becomes even more powerful. Soon, the team begins to gather their weapons and eventually tracks the location of the evil woman, while they manage to follow her trail to an abandoned dock. However, the group quickly realizes that something is wrong when they find a man tied to a chair as a hostage, while the enemy quickly jumps down from the ceiling and knocks the young people to the ground. Fortunately, the group manages to recover immediately as they try to attack the enemy all together, but prove to be no match for Repulsa, as they are thrown away like ragdolls and completely dominated by the evil woman. This gives Repulsa the chance to tie up all the Power Rangers, while demanding that they tell her the location of the Zeo Crystal immediately. The young people hear her out and try to resist her intimidation at first, but Billy cannot watch his friends being tortured by the enemy, which forces him to reveal the location of the crystal to her. However, the woman never intended to keep her promise from the start, as she quickly throws Billy into the water and leaves the others to watch their friend drown. Fortunately, the team finally manages to free themselves and immediately begins to pull their comrade back, but only to discover that their efforts were completely futile, as Billy had already passed away. This leaves the group with no choice but to take their friend's body toward the alien ship, while Jason begs Zordon to somehow save his friend's life. However, the alien reveals that he cannot revive Billy, which causes the friends to fall into sadness, as they would trade their own lives for their friends. What they do not realize is that their understanding of the importance of their teammates' lives eventually managed to unlock the Morphin Grid, which means Zordon can finally be resurrected, just as he had planned. Surprisingly, instead of using this opportunity to revive himself, the alien decided to bring Billy back to life, as he realized that only the new generation of Power Rangers can defeat the current enemy. Soon afterward, they all begin to head to their individual platforms as before, but this time they feel a different power flowing through their bodies as the Morphin Grid begins to cover the humans with armors, transforming the young people into the true Power Rangers. At the same time, Repulsa arrived at a gold mine and begins to conjure a powerful spell, as all the gold particles begin to merge together, creating a gigantic monster known as Goldar. The woman sees her horrendous creation rising above everything around, and commands that the giant monster retrieve the Zeo Crystal in the nearby city. What she does not realize is that the Power Rangers have already regained their powers, while they jump quickly into the water, destroying all the stone monsters in the process, breaking the enemies into pieces. Very soon the team emerges from the water as they finally land in the mountains before charging directly toward the remaining enemies and mercilessly destroying the creatures. However, no matter how many monsters the Power Rangers manage to destroy, the numbers of the enemies continue to increase within the fierce battle. This forces Zack to take out his dinosaur robot to crush all the creatures at once, destroying all the monsters by firing his machine guns. The team eventually manages to kill all the enemies in the mountains, but soon realizes that something is wrong, as they notice that Repulsa's immense monster is heading directly toward the city. This leaves them with no choice but to enter their individual robots as well, before quickly firing from the cave as they run toward the city to prevent their enemy from obtaining the Zeo Crystal. Very soon, the Power Rangers manage to reach the city, but quickly see that Goldar is destroying everything in sight while causing chaos among the people. The team tries to stop the enemies immediately, while Kimberly activates her weapons and fires directly at the evil woman to get her attention. However, this only causes Repulsa to summon numerous monsters from the ground, as she plans to fight the Power Rangers to the death. The young people see this and directly charge against the enemies for battle, while knocking the stone monsters away like flying insects. But no matter how many creatures they kill, the enemies keep reappearing in the area like armies of ants. What is even worse, Repulsa eventually finds the Krispy Kreme, while commanding Goldar to dig to recover the crystal immediately. The Power Rangers see this and quickly attack the immense monster, while trying to prevent the enemy by attacking the creature from behind. But Goldar manages to throw the Rangers away with tremendous force, as he seems completely unscathed by the humans' attacks. While the heroes are being beaten up by the immense foe, Kimberly manages to create a plan, while quickly taking Billy to the air before letting him drop directly onto Repulsa. This creates a massive shockwave that knocks Goldar to the ground and makes the woman fall at the same time, taking down the foe in the process. However, before the heroes can celebrate their victory, they quickly notice that Goldar is starting to transfer his power to his creator, and eventually manages to heal the woman from previous damage. This allows the giant monster to strike the ground with tremendous force, and the Power Rangers are shocked to see that the Zeo Crystal is just below the enemy. The humans realize that they are running out of options, and quickly decide to run toward the enormous hole while planning to defend the crystal from the immense creature, and begin firing all of their weapons at the giant enemy. However, their attacks have no effect, as the immense opponent begins striking the heroes from above and throwing the Rangers to the ground. But the group refuses to give up so easily as they continue fighting against the monster with all their strength. The enemy sees this and quickly orders his creature to push the humans into the enormous hole, while the Power Rangers desperately try to resist, but are eventually overpowered by the immense foe as everyone is thrown into the gigantic hole. Surprisingly, instead of being destroyed by the tremendous heat, the robots begin to merge with the power of the Zeo Crystal, which causes a massive explosion in the process, as they begin to emerge from the ground like a phoenix. This causes Repulsa to approach Goldar before being charged by the entity, as she eventually merges with the massive creature, greatly enhancing the monster's power at the same time. The Rangers see this and begin to attack their enemy. While eventually colliding with the Golden Giant, the Rangers manage to regain their balance immediately before delivering a devastating punch directly to the monster's face. However, Goldar quickly manages to retaliate as well by continuously striking the humans, but Billy manages to counterattack the blows by kicking the enemy toward the field. This causes the golden humanoid to draw his sword before rushing toward the people furiously, but the Rangers manage to dodge the attack in time, while quickly grabbing the enemy and throwing the creature against the ground. Jason sees that Goldar is paralyzed and decides to take the enormous swords from the robot's back before stabbing the monster in the chest, forcing Repulsa to escape from the enormous creature. However, the woman refuses to give up so easily, despite being completely at a disadvantage, while furiously advancing toward the Power Rangers, but is quickly struck by the giant robot that sends her flying out of the atmosphere, and in the empty space, she freezes to death. Very soon, all the citizens of the small town begin to come out of their hiding spots, being surprised to see the enormous robot before their eyes, while the Power Rangers finally understand their true purpose on this planet, as they promise to protect the people from any future invaders.